All right, let's get started. So I'm gonna make this simple. If you're here because you clicked the title, then I'm sure you're already here, knowing that this is going to be a spoiler review. But I'm just going to just make sure I'm saving the right people's lives by saying that once again, this is a spoiler review, and if you have not watched the film, I highly recommend you do not stick around. All right, and the reason I'm saying that is because this film relies on um, quite a bit of what do you call these? Um, not to say it's like a mystery or anything, but there is a bunch of things that would be better if you just don't know. And I think once you know it, watching it like rewatching it after knowing certain things may not be as joyful. So there's these elements of suspense that you just want to keep. So if you really want to watch the movie, I highly recommend you leave now and don't listen to this spoiler review. However, if you don't intend to watch the film anytime soon, or you really just don't care for the movie, and you're just curious about how the Spider Man movie turned out as it is, well, I'm here to tell you my point of view as a longtime Spider Man fan. I've read Spider Man comics since like the late 90s, I would say, and I've read comics dating back to the 80s. I do know comics dating back a little bit older, but I know I only became a fan late in the 90s because I'm a 90s kid. And I've always collected Spider-Man collectibles. I've been a fan of Spider-Man even before Tobey Maguire's movie was released. I used to watch the 1980s cartoon and the 90s cartoon and the 2000s cartoon, all of the cartoons of Spider-Man. I've seen Spider-Man villains from, the Vulture, Morlun, all sorts of crazy things, how Spider-Man interacts with Madam Web, Doctor Strange, and I'm talking all of this even before the movies were released. Like I knew all of these interactions of Spider-Man and various other characters, the Fantastic Four, how he's a good friend of the Human Torch, how he helps out Reed Richards' son from collapsing the entire world into nothingness. There's so many amazing storylines that Spider-Man has been in. So uh, just forget about educating me about Spider-Man in the comments. Just forget about it. I'm going to tell you what I think about this movie, and you may or may not like it. And I will tell you as honest as possible because I do not beat around the bush in my reviews, and I don't bullshit about anything. I don't care about the reputation of my channel over the truth that I am going to give people. I feel that it is more important that I give people an honest review rather than being recommended by YouTube. Because quite honestly, YouTube is shit right now. They've completely removed the dislike button, which means that if you really do dislike this video, no one is going to care. And I personally feel that that's not right. And if you really do dislike this video, go ahead and do it. So my education session is over. I'm going to get to my review of this film. So, hey guys, and welcome back for those of you who are back, and welcome to those of you who are new. So, Spider-Man: No Way Home turned out to be, the MCU's like big punch of 2021. It was the ultimate way I feel they could have ended 2021. And if you ask me whether they did it well, I would say they did it as probably the best that they could, because after the end of Endgame, Avengers Endgame, there was a lot of gaps in the plot between the characters and where they're going to take things from there. Because while they built up a really beautiful story to give a finale to, the Avengers, there were a lot of other superheroes left out with their own individual stories being incomplete. Some of them just beginning, some of them somewhere in the middle, some of them, going nowhere basically. And we did have a whole bunch of TV series which were whatever. I don't think they were that great, honestly. None of the TV series that came out was that good. I think that the Marvel's What If was really interesting, but once again, that's not a specific story. It's just a possibility kind of story, or the multiverse kind of theory sort of story, which is also once again nothing developing. It's not like you have to watch the previous films to enjoy that bit. And while I think that that's a good idea, this particular Spider-Man, which is acted by Tom Holland, just does not have a story for himself. He is all over the place, torn by the fact that he's brought into the world of the Avengers, which was already a well-established team of superheroes, and he tries to fit in under the arms of or rather under the mentorship of Tony Stark, who is a very established and very powerful Iron Man. And he, while yes, it was nice to see, Spider-Man take up the more junior role and sort of learn up, from Tony Stark. He doesn't really learn anything, and I think this film really proves that over the course of all the films that Spider-Man has been in, over the troubles that he has been through, the fact that he has to take life more seriously, be a superhero, be an Avenger, be more responsible, and understand that things can go wrong if you're not prepared, and all of these sorts of things. Despite everything that he has gone through in this film, he just makes the same mistakes. And among the three Spider-Man that we have seen in the past, uh, while Tom Holland, my personally for me, Tom Holland, I think is the youngest and most suitable Spider-Man for the role of Spider-Man, and he's very talented. He's very acrobatic. He has pretty decent acting in terms of his facial expressions and whatever, but he is the stupidest Spider-Man because of the plot. Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man was just like Andrew Garfield's really charismatic, but his Spider-Man was not that good because of the story that was given to him. Tobey Maguire definitely had the best story, and while he may not have been the most charismatic of the Spider-Man, he was meant to be that Spider-Man that just suffers from a lot of shit, and he fulfilled that role really well, and he had some of the best films. But Tom Holland is the stupidest Spider-Man because he just never learns from his past mistakes and the things that he has gone through, and he sort of just goes through that loop over and over again over the course of all the movies that we have seen. And this movie is no different. So why have I mentioned Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire? Because yes, they are indeed in this film. And yay, surprise! Yes, everyone cheered when they showed up. Even I cheered when they showed up. I think it's really nice to see them because they were part of my childhood. They were part of me growing up. I saw Tobey Maguire when I was like still in school. I saw Andrew Garfield when I was like I think barely in college, and then now we have Tom Holland, and I'll love seeing Spider-Man for years to come. But quite frankly, this movie was just not. It was not a very good movie, and I really don't understand how much these critics have been paid to give you 100%, 10 out of 10, 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10 reviews because it's none of those ratings. And don't get me wrong, it's not a bad movie. It's not a Trust me, there are bad movies, but this is not a bad movie. It was an okay movie, but it wasn't a great film or anything. It's not the best Spider-Man film. It's not the best MCU film. It's none of that. It's not the best in anything. In fact, it has a very niche purpose, which is fan service, which it does really, really, really well. So the story goes by Tom Holland, the Peter Parker of this universe, continuing his, from his previous film with Mysterio. Basically, his identity is revealed to the world by Quentin Beck, Mysterio, and Mysterio still has the tech that was that was created by Stark, right, to control the drones and whatever. But they don't follow up on the story. And the way Quentin Beck and the team says that Mysterio is not a person, he's like a team, or rather he's like the group that wants to avenge themselves, for Stark or whatever, just as every villain does. That story is not followed up upon, and also the fact that the Vulture, Michael Keaton's Vulture, knows the identity of Peter Parker in the last film. If you may have seen, they don't follow up on that either. So none of what he calls Tom Holland's villains are touched upon. It's all about the villains of Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield that end up in this universe. And so how it happens is Peter Parker's life is sort of being ruined because he feels that with people knowing that he's Spider-Man, he can't live a normal life. And while he may be okay with that, he doesn't like it because his friends and family are also being affected. Mainly um, MJ and Ned. MJ and Ned's lives also can't be normal. Even though they are normal people, they are not superheroes. They don't plan to be superheroes. They are normal people, but because everyone knows that they are friends of Spider-Man, they can't live normal lives anymore. And also, Spider-Man's under the controversy that he has recently killed off Mysterio, who is supposedly a superhero that has helped to that was trying to save the world, and Spider-Man killed him or whatever. As a result of the controversies, all of their college applications get rejected, and Peter feels really bad about this, and so he decides to go to meet Doctor Strange, who was a really good part of this film. And Doctor Strange decides to create a spell that will help him by making the world forget that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, and knowing that sentence is very important because it comes into play of how the spell works. So whoever knows Peter Parker is Spider-Man will be affected, and that's basically it. So you see, the way this works for me is really odd because um, if the spell is going to make you forget a specific person is another person, that would mean that all the events that you have gone through with that person, you wouldn't remember it either because you may have gone through certain events only by knowing that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And now with you not knowing those events, your memory would be just distorted. Like you would just not be able to recall anything at all at that point, and you obviously have to figure it out somehow. So it's possible that everyone will forget, but they'll definitely have the ability to recall. I think that's the simplest way the spell works. It's not like a spell that completely distorts reality to make everyone completely not able to remember. It just sort of deletes that temporary knowledge that yes, Peter Parker is Spider-Man. At least that's the logic that I can come up with. All right, a bit of science fiction. So you see, the thing about Peter Parker is that when he goes to Doctor Strange to tell him that he wants to do this thing, they don't talk about the consequences. Doctor Strange doesn't warn Peter before he creates the spell that you have to be sure of what you want to do. What's the plan? Are you sure about this? Is this okay? These are the side effects. Like Doctor Strange knows all these things can go wrong, but he doesn't discuss it with Peter, and they just start casting the spell, and it goes wrong because Peter starts talking inside the spell with of his worries and concerns about how his best friends and his aunt will also not remember that he is Spider-Man. And as a result, the spell goes wrong, and Doctor Strange has to cast an enchantment to sort of contain that spell. And he believes that the spell is contained. However, we later find out that the spell has not been fully contained, and certain parts of the spell have leaked out. And as a result, from the multiverse, other Spider-Man and their villain all show up in this Earth. Whatever the current Earth is, we'll just call it Earth Zero because there's no identity given to it. There are no labels. There's no actual scientist labeling anything or giving us any sort of lore or backstory as to what these different dimensions are called. There's none of that sort of thing. Everyone's just like, oh right, it's this Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man universe. It's Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man universe. Like we don't know what exactly they're called. There's no labeling, as I say. So that's the first thing. And then we must also remember that um, you see, there are the Avengers, like in the world, and they know that Spider Man is an Avenger. And obviously, if Spider Man's identity is being revealed, everyone at Avengers HQ would know that. So it just seems really odd to me that the Avengers all of a sudden decide not to help Peter Parker, Spider Man. That's really, really just a massive plot hole. Because you see, the thing about Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire is that they never relied on the Avengers. They were Spider-Man and they were independent. But for Tom Holland, that's not the case. He has relied on the Avengers for most of the part. Yes, he had his own solo films and whatever, and yes, he did his part, but that's fine. That's like things happening within the neighborhood. He's trying to solve it, and yes, some of it are big villains, but he did have Iron Man intervening in the first one against the Vulture, and I believe in the what do you call this? In the second one, who was intervening in that? Um, yeah, yeah, I think it's just Iron Man. Iron Man was like basically intervening in both films because it mostly has to do with Tony Stark. Everything has to do with Tony Stark technically. And Nick Fury was there too, but it's a fake one. But yeah, anyway, whatever. In this film, so when his identity is revealed to the world, I just felt so weird that the Avengers don't, you know, call him to help him and tell him like, hey, we can work this out for you. It's gonna be okay. We can vouch for you because you fought with us, to stop Thanos, which is not a joke, right? Everyone knows that. Everyone knows Spider-Man fought together to stop Thanos, and the Avengers just don't help at all in this film. So they cast a spell, something happens, and Peter goes back to his regular day, trying to do things like usual. And then all of a sudden, when he tries to, he looks for this lady who's apparently like the person who has a chance at helping him with a scholarship that he and his friends are looking for. So he just runs to like he tries to catch her before she reaches the airport. So he swings around and he finds her and he tries to convince her. And while that happens, Dr. Octopus attacks. So we see that from the trailer. He attacks and he says, Hello, Peter," and then he tries to fight him, and then later realizes that that's not his Peter Parker. And another weird interaction happens, which is when he attacks Spider Man, the nanotechnology from the suit all of a sudden just breaks apart and envelops Dr. Octopus's arms, and Doc Ock is just okay with that all of a sudden. And it allows Spider Man to suddenly control his arms. Like I don't know how that even works. Hmm. I'm still trying to figure that bit out because there's no explanation. And yeah, yeah, no one knows. It's just whatever. It's magic. I think nanotechnology is basically magic, which is what it is because there's no need for explanation because it can't be explained. So Spider-Man controls Doctor Octopus's arms to capture him, free the person, the lady that is trying to seek the scholarship from, and then she says, "Okay, thanks for saving my life. I'll recommend you and your friends to college and whatever." And then she eats, and he takes no he. Then they get attacked by the Goblin. Goblin all of a sudden shows up to attack them, but before Goblin can assault Spider-Man, Spider-Man and Doc Ock get teleported to Doctor Strange's dungeon. And Doctor Strange creates this multiple chambers where in one of them Lizard is already captured. Doc Ock is in the second one, and he tells Peter to go and look for the other villains that may have escaped. And Strange is going somewhere to sort of I don't even know where Strange goes, but Strange goes somewhere strange. And Peter is given the task of capturing the villain, the remaining villains, to try to bring them to that basement so that Doctor Strange can fix the whole problem for him. So yeah. Anyway, by the way, Wong is the Sorcerer Supreme, and he eats and is never seen to the end of the film, which also doesn't make sense because if there is a dimension breaking chaos aspect to the story, I'm sure the Sorcerer Supreme, who is Wong, should come and help. Like if you're not going to bring him to help, why even call him the Sorcerer Supreme? Just call him like the backup circle guru or whatever, because he just shows up, makes circles, and goes through them and just goes off. That's all he does. That's all he ever does in any film. Like he does not fight at the level Doctor Strange can. So for him to be called Sorcerer Supreme and then not do anything for the rest of the film, it's like I don't see the point in it. But anyway, so so Spider-Man gets an upgrade to his suit, which is the gold suit we see in the trailer, and he has to use that to go and try to blast the villains with some magical wrist shooter, which looks like the one in the photo here, but it's slightly more upgraded. And if he shoots the villain, they go into Doctor Strange's dungeon and they get captured there. And there's a lot of quips and jokes and one-liners and whatever. Some of them are okay, some of them are whatever, but it doesn't really matter to me because Jokes are great, but if your story is hollow, the jokes just don't matter. You can be unless you're planning to make a comedy, which is what I think it is. But if you look at the genre, it says action, adventure, sci-fi. Really? Are you guys serious with that? But anyway, all right. Getting back to the story. So Spider-Man looks for the second villain, which is Electro, and Electro is actually really powerful in the story. They actually made him a really, really powerful character, which is closer to the comics. In the comics, Electro is really like a literal demigod. He is super powerful. He's ridiculously powerful. And in this one, I think he's restored to that sort of glory because he is like the strongest villain. Except his weakness is quite simple, which is you just gotta find a way to like EMP him or uh, disable his device or discharge him, or there's usually some technical element, some science element used to defeat Electro, and I think that's the same in this film. So I think Electro's character is done pretty well. Doc Ock's character is given a reasonable amount of respect to the fact that he is Dr. Octavius when he is good and he's normal, he's actually willing to help people. But when he's controlled by the like when he doesn't have the inhibitor chip or whatever, the machines control him and he becomes a psychopath. So that sort of two-dimensional aspect to him is shown really well. And then when he goes to capture Electro, he struggles a little bit, but Sandman appears to help him. And Sandman is the one that helps him capture Electro, and he actually helps to capture. He actually captures Sandman and Electro for Doctor Strange and apologizes to them, saying that sorry, I have to catch you all because the situation is much bigger than all of this. So the last one that he has to capture is the Goblin, who actually just shows up in Aunt May's place. And the reason he shows up is because Norman Osborn's split personality is still having some issues. So he returns to Norman Osborn's personality, and he is, not seeking to kill or attack anyone. And Peter just captures him as well. So now all the villains are captured. That's basically it. I don't think I missed anyone. There's the Lizard, there's Electro, there's Sandman, there's your Goblin, and Doctor Octopus. I think that's about it. There's five villains, right? Yeah. Yeah. I think so. That's about it. Five villains. So I wish we had a sixth one. Um, so anyway, all of them are captured, and Doctor Strange is about to release the spell that will send them back to their worlds. But Peter Parker realizes that he learns from Doctor Strange that if they're sent back to their own worlds, they will die based on the story points that they're at, because they all die fighting Spider-Man in their respective stories, which is true for the most part, except Sandman doesn't die. Yeah, from what I remember in the end of Spider-Man 3, Sandman does not die. So um yeah. Anyway, but Goblin dies, yes. Doc Ock dies, yes. The Lizard, yes. Um Electro, maybe, because there were like clues to say that Electro may not have died. Um so there was a maybe there, but Sandman doesn't die. But whatever. So they want to help the rest of the villains, and Peter decides to stop Doctor Strange from performing the spell to send the villains back to their dimensions, and he steals the this kind of box that Doctor Strange is using to contain the spell. Oh, right. So Doctor Strange goes somewhere to actually look for like a box to contain the enchantment or whatever. But anyway, so Spider-Man and him have a beautiful battle inside the mirror dimension. Really well, well designed, very beautiful. And Doctor Strange's fight scenes, I felt, are the most creative in the entire film. I've seen three Spider-Man fight five villains, but let me tell you, Doctor Strange's fight scenes were some of the coolest in the entire film. And it's not because of just the spell casting, it's the way they design the spell casting. It's how he uses certain intelligent positions of portals and whips and lassos and certain very unique aspects and elements to sort of catch Spider-Man in certain circumstances. And I felt that those scenes were super duper cool. There were also some interesting interactions where Doctor Strange learns that Spider-Man's body has this, its own mind, the Spider Sense, which allows Spider-Man's body to just react to Doctor Strange trying to grab the box, even though Doctor Strange has knocked out Peter Parker's soul from the body. So that's also a pretty cool little thing that happens. But after the entire fight scene, Spider-Man just easily, gets Doctor Strange's sling ring from his fingers and the box and traps Doctor Strange in the mirror dimension. Yep, you heard that right. Spider-Man traps Doctor Strange in the mirror dimension, which is like 5 hit, right? Um, yeah, so yeah. Apparently that works on the Sorcerer Supreme. Um, hmm. Okay, fine, fair enough. If that is the case, what if something were to happen to Spider-Man and the sling ring could never be activated? Doctor Strange would be trapped in the mirror dimension forever. Literally forever. And it would have been even worse, I think. So yeah, this Peter Parker really is way over his head in whatever he does. He does not think. He has not learned from the fact that bad things can happen if you don't listen to the experienced sorcerer who has saved the world not once. Yeah. Anyway, whatever. So he traps Doctor Strange in the mirror dimension. He comes back to the box, and then he gives the box to MJ, and then he gives the sling ring to Ned. And Ned gives hints that he feels magical abilities when he moves his fingers. And later we find out that when he has the ability to use the sling ring all of a sudden without any practice, because apparently he has some magical inbred elements in his lineage that allows him to do that. Whereas for MJ, she's given the box, and Peter says, "Just press this little button on the box, and everything, like all the villains, will just go back to their own worlds." And I'm not sure if that's intended. Like, why would they humanly think that they can just press a button on the box and everything's going to go back to normal? Like, Doctor Strange would not just press the button on the box. Doctor Strange is going to cast some unique spell to actually send them back to their respective places. So I don't think, why would like they think pressing the button would just solve everything? You didn't think the box had like the magic button for them to just press it and everything's going to go back to normal? I think that these things are just really stupid. But hey, I don't blame the actors or whatever. That's all just in the writing. The writing is crap. Um, and the dialogues throughout the film I felt were also really just cheesy and whatever. There were only very few specific dialogues that were like okay. The rest of it is just like whatever, move along kind of dialogues, like nothing memorable. You do get the with great power comes great responsibility, except you get it from Aunt May in this one. Anyway, so after that little incident there, Spider-Man decides to release all the villains, like the absolute complete utter moron that he is, and take them together and tell them, "I want to save your lives, and I'm not going to let you all die in your respective worlds, but you have to agree to let me help you." And he decides to put them all together with him in the apartment, Happy's apartment, where Aunt May is, and he is there with Aunt May. Happy is not there at the time they start to work, and they start to use this fabricator, stock fabricator. That's like another box of magic that's in the house, and stock tech is just magic. It can do whatever it wants for you. If you ask me, it's probably more powerful than Doctor Strange. It can literally build whatever you want, and they use that to fabricate an inhibitor chip to help Doc Ock. They create like this tool to discharge all the electricity from Electro's body, which is not completed because Electro fights back in the end. They try to create a serum to help the lizard, which also is not used. But the coolest thing is that Norman Osborn, which is revealed that he was never it was never Norman Osborn in control. It was the Goblin just pretending to be Norman Osborn so that he can learn and figure things out with the technology that Spider-Man has. And I also don't know why, if that's the case, he would let himself be captured. Like, he was going to die 5 seconds ago. Like, all of a sudden, when he realizes that Spider-Man is going to bring them all to this apartment, Norman Osborn, eventually reveals that he was Goblin all the while. So that little scene is pretty cool because after Peter works with the fabricator to try to help everyone, he suddenly gets this intense spider sense reaction, and he walks into the hallway, and he's just standing there looking at everyone, trying to figure out what's going wrong, and his body just reacts to Norman Osborn's arm, and Norman Osborn tells him that's a neat trick, and he realizes that the Goblin has been in control all the while, and what do you call this? The lizard who is left in a truck alone, right? The diabolical lizard that wants to turn the entire world into lizards is left in a truck alone by himself, just breaks out to go and help Norman Osborn fight Spider-Man. Sandman, just gets coaxed by a one-liner from Goblin saying, "We are gods, we can do whatever we want, we don't have to be cured." And Sandman releases himself. Electro releases himself, and they all agree to Goblin just like that, and they also all take off respectively. The only one that is, still in control is Doctor Octopus, who wants to help, but he gets sort of beaten off the building that he's in. So there's a fight scene between Spider-Man and Goblin, and the rest of the villains leave. And the fight scene takes place for a little while, but Goblin doesn't have his suit or whatever, so it's just like a hand-to-hand fight, which is pretty cool, by the way. And the Lizard also intervenes a little bit. So after that little cool little fight scene, they all end up in like the bottom of that apartment building. There are no Avengers that intervene when all this happens. Yeah, I'm talking like a huge destruction, but there's no Avenger that comes to help. Happy literally drives a truck and arrives there. Happy doesn't call the Avengers for help, which is also super duper weird. Um, but okay, whatever. They wanted to just tell you that just forget about the Avengers. They're not connected to this at all. They made that a point. I think that's literally it. They're telling you forget the logic of the Avengers being in this universe for this one film, and just deal with it. So oh yeah, there's one cool little cameo. When Spider-Man initially gets convicted of the murder of Mysterio, the lawyer that comes to defend him is Charlie Cox's Matt Murdock, the absolute best Daredevil, and it's really cool to see him there. But that's about it. Just has like this cool little cameo scene where he catches like a flying brick, even though he's blind, and that's about it. He doesn't do anything else in the film, but it's a just cool little cameo. So they crash at the bottom of the building fighting, and the goblin actually gets his glider flying back in. He throws a bunch of bombs. Aunt May dies. Very emotional little scene there. And Spider-Man yeets because the SWAT squad is coming in, and Ned and what do you call this, MJ, are in like this random apartment. I can't remember where exactly they are, but they are thinking whether they need to help Peter. And all of a sudden, Ned is able to figure out just by moving his hand that he can use a sling ring. So he opens a portal, hoping that he can. He wants to open a portal to Peter Parker, but the first Peter Parker that comes in is Andrew Garfield. And then Ned just tries to do it again like 2 minutes later, and then the second Peter Parker that comes in is Tobey Maguire. So now you have both Peter Parkers in the same room with Ned and what do you call this, MJ, and it's really hilarious and all. But it's like, oh, what, you're telling me Ned is the solution to save the world? Well, okay, fine. I think that's a reasonably funny little situation. But Aunt May just died. Like, we don't get to grieve for these characters because you just pushed into another scene with comedy. Like the weight of the characters' deaths really don't matter in the MCU because you're going to be hit by a one-liner in the very next scene. You're going to be hit by ass jokes or something. I don't know. There's always going to be something stupid just coming up. Like the fact that Aunt May just died, and Peter Parker is like feeling miserable and realizing how badly he screwed up. Probably the lowest he has been as both Peter Parker and Spider-Man. The next scene is Ned's sling ring joke, and the Spider-Man show up out of portals, and they make more jokes, and it's jokes and jokes and jokes and jokes until they realize they gotta go and help uh, Peter, and then they go and find him, and then all of a sudden it's trying to be another emotional little roller coaster there, where the other two Spider-Men try to give him advice and tell him that we understand what it means to lose someone, and they want to help him. So that little aspect of how the two Spider-Man give their experience and their emotional sort of sharing between each other to try to help one another, that was cool. That was really well done. and also Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, they get a lot of screen time. It's not just like they're not cameo at all. They are completely acting in this film, and it is really fun to see all of them together. It's really really amazing. Well done to the MCU for actually putting all the Spider-Man together. But I mean, okay, so you've done it until that point. What then? So then it turns out there's another scene where all the Spider-Man have to work together to try to complete the cures that they have to remove the villains of their powers. And apparently, it looks like if you remove the villains of all their powers, they all just like the problems are solved. Because technically, if these villains don't have their powers, they're useless. Like they don't stand a chance against the police, and therefore, Spider-Man doesn't have to care about them. See, you see, the point I'm making is that you can't cure a villain just by removing their powers. It may work for Doctor Octopus because it's the inhibitor chip. It's all the voices from the arms. So yeah, it's a kind of dual personality thing. It's the same thing with Norman Osborn. It's dual personality. But as for and maybe even the Lizard, right? But I think the Lizard is not dual personality anymore because the Doctor obviously is aware of what he's doing. And for Electro too, I think Electro is aware for the most part of what he's doing. And what do you call this? Sandman is also aware of what he's doing. So just curing them alone is not going to solve the problem. You know, like yeah, you can cure them, but did you actually help them? Like the reason they became villains is because of a very specific incident. It's not because they have powers. Those are two separate things. But whatever, they try to solve the villains by giving them cures for their powers. All right, just yeah, just bear with me. So, they work in a lab together, which is a very nice, cool little scene of the three Spider-Men working together in the lab. No, nothing really is explained about how they figured out the cures or what they gotta do to do that. Everyone's just got like, all right, I know how to do this, I know how to do that, I know how to do this, and then they all just figure out the cures immediately, and they all use this amazing stock fabricator tech that's like a magic box, and of course some other tools and equipments. And Andrew Garfield Spider-Man has figured out a cure for the lizard before, so he gets to replicate that. Apparently, Tobey Maguire can actually figure out a cure for the Goblin. I don't know how or why, but he apparently has a way to figure out a cure. So he works on that, and yeah, that entire scene was pretty fun and pretty cool. And we move on from there to where they decide to have the fight. So they decide to have a fight on the Statue of Liberty, where they taunt all the villains to come together to try to stop them, and they try to cure all the villains by preparing all the equipment that they have. So they had this funny conversation before that about how Tobey Maguire can actually shoot his webs without the web slinger, without the web shooter. Like he comes out of his hands. I found those things are just cute and little funny moments, but not significant in any way. But okay, whatever. It's just fun. So as I said, it's a great movie for like fan service, but that's all it is. It's just fan service in a box. There's no real, like it doesn't stand on its own if not for the fan service. But okay, anyway. They call all the villains. All the villains show up to fight them on the Statue of Liberty. I'm not sure how Sandman goes there because, if I'm not mistaken, when Sandman gets hits by water, right, he just doesn't work the same anymore. Like his weakness is water, so I'm not sure how he crosses the water to the Statue of Liberty. I'm not sure about that. I think he just flies in the air or something and arrives there. That part was a little bit uh like I don't know. I really can't recall that part. Like I just watched the movie, but I really can't recall how Sandman actually gets to the Statue of Liberty. But anyway, so the other villains all show up and they fight the Spider-Man. All the three Spider-Man work together to fight. I felt that the three Spider-Man's fight scenes were not very creative. Just based on the fact that I've seen the Spider-Man fight scenes from like a lot of other Spider-Man films. And while Spider-Man 2 had great fight scenes, even the Amazing Spider-Man actually had a great fight scene between the Lizard and Spider-Man. A lot of this crawling and jumping around and twisting moments. And I think Tom Holland's Spider-Man had a pretty interesting what do you call this fight scene, especially in the plane and whatever. But other than that, in this film in particular, the Spider-Man fight scenes I felt were just like very generic. There was nothing really unique about it. Like the Doctor Strange scenes were a little bit cooler, I felt. But the Spider-Man scenes were like so what? They just swing around and punch each other. I mean, punch the villains. It's expected, right? There's nothing really cool. There's no unique web shooter or any specific technology they create so that they can improve their fighting. Yeah, it's nothing that unique. They don't even show like the strengths and weaknesses of the three Spider-Man. They don't show like how Tobey Maguire is better at certain things or Andrew Garfield is better at something else. They don't do that either. They just show them as personalities of Peter Parker, and they all pretty much fight the same way. So yeah, there's that. So they fight the villains, and they manage to cure the Sandman. They manage to cure the Lizard. They cure the Electro. Doc Ock actually comes to help them, and then all of a sudden Goblin comes in, and Goblin's he's trying to intervene in the fight. He disables Doc Ock's arm. He just cuts one arm, and then all of a sudden Doc Ock is defeated. I don't know what happens to Doc Ock after that. Like he has three remaining arms, but I don't see him after that. And then he continues to throw bombs and destroy the scaffolding around the Statue of Liberty because I think they're building the Statue of Liberty holding Captain America's shield or something. So it destroys that, and then MJ falls in one scene, which you can I think see in the trailer. Uh, what do you call it? Tom Holland doesn't manage to get to her, but Andrew Garfield does get to her, and there's this emotional moment where. Upon saving her, he feels very accomplished because he was not able to do that with Gwen Stacy in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. So yeah, a lot of the emotional elements to this I think is delivered really well from Andrew Garfield, and I think it was also done on purpose because I believe they also wanted to show just how good and capable Andrew Garfield is as an actor, and how his casting of Spider-Man was great. Like he was great as an actor. It's just that the script was bad, and while he may not have been the appropriate Spider-Man because Spider-Man was more of like the nerdy or rather the geeky sort of character who's just supposed to have a miserable life. Andrew Garfield had like a lot of things. He had like almost everything. He had like a Sony phone or whatever, I remember. And he's like the cool Peter Parker, right? But aside from that aspect, like he's very charismatic, and I think that really stood out in this film. Tobey Maguire, I felt was kind of kept in the shadow a little more. So Tobey Maguire, who had the best films in this, was not as highlighted as much as Andrew Garfield, who actually had the worst films. Right, apologies, I had a bit of a call there. So anyway, getting back to the story, if I can remember where I left it, the yeah, Tobey Maguire, who had the best movies, actually had was a little bit more in the shadows, and Andrew Garfield, who had the worst movies, was actually in the limelight, and Tom Holland was just, I guess, somewhere in between, and still trying to find his place as Spider-Man. And let me tell you, he does not. All the way to the end of this movie, he still does not have a place to stand because okay, I'll get to it, right? So anyway, they have a fight with the Goblin. The scaffolding all breaks, and MJ is saved by Andrew Garfield, and then they continue fighting. And then Ned releases Doctor Strange by opening another portal, and Doctor Strange comes in and just takes charge of the situation by focusing on a spell to sort of fix the multiverse from collapsing. And then these ruptures in space-time start happening around the Statue of Liberty, and you can see like this extraterrestrial beings trying to come in, and what do you call this? Doctor Strange is focusing on trying to fix the spell, and meanwhile, Spider-Man is fighting the battle on the ground against the Goblin, and at first he tries to beat up the Goblin to the point where he wants to kill him, and this there's a lot of hand to hand between him and the Goblin, and not as much swinging and like the unique Goblin action that we got to see in the first Spider-Man, like Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. In this one, you don't see much of that goblin flying around, really fighting and all of those sorts of things. They never really did that. I'm not sure why, but I think they maybe just didn't want to do it. Like yes, goblin flies around, but the action is just not very cool. There's not really many slow mos or dodging or evading or anything specifically unique like that. It's just like, all right, he moves here, he swings there, all right, he jumps here, fights there, he punches here, all right, okay. It's about that. It's about it. So yeah, so Tom Holland's sort of in a bit of a rage because Aunt May was killed by Goblin, so he wants to kill the Goblin, and then Toby goes in to um, stop him from killing Goblin, but the Goblin stabs Toby in the back. But Toby's fine as a result of the stab. So once again, it's like, yeah, whatever. He just stabs him, and then Andrew Garfield throws to Peter a serum that will help to cure Norman Osborn, and Peter jabs it into Norman Osborn, and like all of a sudden he remembers who he is, and his personality goes back from a Goblin to Norman Osborn, and he's okay. And the stabbed Tobey Maguire is also okay. So apparently the stab was not intended to kill him. Because I'm pretty sure if goblins wanted to stab a Spider-Man, he would just stab him straight through the heart. So I have no idea why the stab just didn't kill Toby. I think Toby should have died. But okay, whatever, never mind. That's their choice. Probably there's another alternate footage somewhere where Toby actually dies. Maybe they didn't want to take that route and give a double sad scene because they want to crack a joke after that, obviously, right? Obviously, come on. Which they do. They do crack several jokes after that, which is like I think routine. And after cracking more jokes, Doctor Strange sort of manages to fix the balance of space time, but he says that it's gonna get worse from here. And Peter says, "What if you make everyone forget that I'm Peter Parker? Not just Spider-Man, but make everyone forget who Peter Parker is." And Doctor Strange says, "Yeah, that'll work." And once again, I don't understand the logic behind how people forgetting who Peter Parker is going to work, because all the people who have worked with Spider-Man would now have a void of not knowing uh, who the person behind the mask was. Like especially Happy Hogan, who spent a lot of time with Spider-Man and saving Spider-Man's friends, now would remember Spider-Man but not Peter Parker, which is also a very very strange thing. So the logic behind these, as in terms of science fiction, just does not work in any way. There's no logic. And as I said before in my previous reviews, logic does not mean it has to be able to be proven. That's fact, right? I'm not talking about fact. I'm talking about, like, if you tell me in your planet 1 plus 1 equals to 3, I will understand that that's the logic that's established in your planet. But you have to tell me that logic to establish it. Like, you tell me that because Spider-Man have this spider sense, they're able to dodge things. I don't need to know how spider sense work. So at least I know how they're able to dodge things. It's because of this unique sense that allows them to identify things that are coming towards them. So similarly, you tell me that, okay, people forget who Peter Parker is, everything's going to go back to normal. But why? You get what I mean? Like, you don't tell me, you don't give me your logic, your part of the story as to why, if people forget who Peter Parker is, everything's going to go back to normal, because that wouldn't make sense at all. Especially for everyone in the world who still knows Peter Parker is Spider-Man, who may have changed their lives as a result of it, would wake up one day to not know why they changed it. Like, it's super awkward. Even Doctor Strange himself would not remember it. At least that's what he said when he was casting the spell. So he casts the spell, everyone forgets who Tom Holland Spider-Man is. The other Spider-Man all return to their world. The villains all return back to their worlds. And of course, we don't know what happens when they return, but they all just disappear, and they all apparently have returned. Ned and what do you call this? MJ forget who this Peter Parker is, and Peter Parker apparently still has an identity for himself somehow. He's able to find money being completely broke to buy, like, to start renting some weird apartment which looks just like Tobey Maguire's apartment. And he goes in the coffee shop where MJ is working to try to he practices a script to try to tell her that he is Peter Parker, but he just can't go through with it. So he remains anonymous to her, and there's an emotional scene of like the main character who gets forgotten by the love of his life because of some time traveling event. It's sort of that cliche which happens here, which is okay. I understand it. It is emotional. It is sad. It is what it is. But it's not something new or unique, or it's just super predictable. Like, you can guess that's what. Oh yeah, yeah, he's gonna go and see her, and it's gonna be one emotional thing. Yeah, we know it's gonna happen. But it's just you can't really feel it because you know there's some joke that's gonna crack a few seconds after that. Which I think towards the end they don't really do much of it. But in the post credits, it's back to it's reset. Um, yeah, Tom Holland basically ends up in his own apartment with his box of his items, and starts to his new adventure as a Spider-Man that no one knows is Peter Parker, and I'm not sure how he goes through with it, where he gets the funds to do things. Probably picks up a job somewhere, which is not explained. J. Jonah Jameson is still his number one enemy, and yeah, so they sort of gave a soft reboot to Tom Holland's Spider-Man by making everyone forget that he's Spider-Man, meaning that his events in Avengers, he's like he has the experience now, but we have not seen his experience kick in the past 3 or 4 movies. Like he doesn't have the understanding of what the stakes are. So I hope after this he does. After this, he has matured enough to understand to take charge of his life as Spider-Man. But at the same time, all of the friends and character building that was done with him to the people around him now is no longer there. All of that has been reset. So for the MCU, I think they are just taking opportunities to sort of reset certain characters to give new opportunities to directors because they don't want to do a full reboot, so they do like these soft reboots. And I think that it's going to be the trend for them to sort of just redo characters, like how they did Thor. They redid Thor in 3 different movies. They redid Hulk. They redid, I don't know, so many other characters. I think they're just going to keep doing that, and like they don't care about character development. Like Loki, they completely reset Loki and then redid him in another new episode in another new series, turning him to a protagonist all of a sudden. So yeah, that's what they like to do, and I think at this point I'm kind of used to it, just understanding what their thought process is. So it's just predictable. So yeah, that's the end of the film. That is the plot. I'm not trying to take any points away from the film by looking for faults on purpose. That is the fault itself. Is just the plot, which is horrible, and the character development, which is null and void. The emotional scenes are there, but you just have these cliche jokes and whatever just thrown in all of a sudden, and the jokes are not even great. They're just like whatever. I think like the funniest or rather the best jokes, if I'm not mistaken, was like really early on. It's somewhere I think it's somewhere between the Spider-Man. They crack some jokes between each other. Uh I think there's even a Ned joke. There's some joke that Ned does. Oh right, it's like a tree or something that gets teleported in. I think even before that there's one or two. But yeah, there were some short good one-liners, but like if you're trying to throw in emotional scenes, just don't throw a one liner after that. Please, I swear. Like someone needs to get fired for those kind of decisions. But yeah, it is what it is. So in the first post credit scene, we see Venom, Tom Hardy's Venom, get teleported back to his dimension. So apparently, he's actually like if you guys didn't watch Venom 2, don't watch it. It's a horrible film. But towards the end, he gets teleported to Tom Holland's dimension. So he just gets teleported back. So we just realized that oh, he was just brought in as a result of the spell, and now he's just going back. So in the end, he's not connected to this universe. And then the second post-credit scene is basically the trailer of Doctor Strange: The Multiverse of Madness. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I think that will be a lot cooler of a film because it has potential for plot if they can pull that off. And I think Doctor Strange's magic and the elements and the crafting and the world building all around him is done really, really well. So yep, that's it from me. That's my review of. I mean, that's the plot basically, and I think I gave my thoughts throughout in between. Now, as for the music, let me tell you, the score is amazing. I think all the scores in the film are great. You actually get to hear the mixed scores of Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man and all the villains as well, like Electro villain, Doc Ock. Like each of them have their own themes. Tobey Maguire, all of them get to have their own little mixed themes as well. That's pretty cool. The graphics and the animation are really good really top notch, but I felt for some reason they were just not as crisp as when I watched Endgame, and I'm not sure why. Like, um, IMAX. I watched it both in IMAX, so I can't really tell why I felt Endgame just felt more crisp. I think just the budget involved in Endgame and the graphic designers were just better. Probably, I feel. So I feel that Endgame just had better graphics than this movie. In this movie, I can sort of see the outlines in certain, points because I am looking for them because I know how graphic design is done. But that's besides the point. It's just that you can certainly tell the real world from the green screen, and certain parts of it just sort of stands out in between when certain scenes get too flashy. So yeah, there is that. So the graphics are really good, but they're not Endgame good. They're not that great. They're not Avatar good. They're like just they're there. They're pretty good. They're really good. So that's that. The music, of course, as I said, is great. The action sequences, once again, they have a lot of action sequences, but they're not that interesting. They're not unique. In terms of the intelligence in this film, there's not that many intelligence scenes. Besides the Doctor Strange fight scene, no, I think even Captain America versus Winter Soldier, in Captain America the Winter Soldier, the 1v1 fight, I think is still a better coordinated fight than everything else in this film. Even the elevator fight was pretty good. In Captain America. Was there another good hand to hand? Was there another good fight scene? Of course, the Thanos fight in Infinity War was pretty good. Like the Guardians with Iron Man against Thanos, that was a pretty cool fight scene. Um, yeah, yeah. So anyway, this the fight scenes were whatever. They were meh. They were just okay. Um, and let me think. The acting, Andrew Garfield was pretty much the one to carry most of the emotion in this film. Of course, Goblin. What's his name? What's the actor's name? Willem Dafoe. Willem Dafoe is brilliant. He's always brilliant. I don't see a reason why I would say otherwise. He's just such a good actor, so he pulls it off. As for the rest of them, they do their part, but I think he's pretty much the highlight. Doc Ock is actually used a little bit for comic relief because of his name or whatever, but yeah, he is what he is. Let's see. Anyone else acted really well? No, I think the rest were whatever. Of course, Tom Holland once again is really good, but I think the lines that were given to him were just whatever. He doesn't say anything inspirational as a Spider-Man, and he does a lot of mistakes as Spider-Man over and over again. And yeah, I think he just doesn't seem to grasp his place in the world as what it means to be, a hero or an Avenger, despite all the shit that he has gone through, and the blip and all of those events. So yeah. Anyway, that's it from me. Let me pull up my rating here. I'm sure you guys will be super duper pissed. But I am here to, of course, annoy you to the fullest. Let's see. Let me pull this in the middle. There we go. 4 out of 10 for Spider-Man No Way Home, which is less than half the rating here in IMDb and also in Rotten Tomatoes, who have both given more than a 9.0 out of 10. And I think it is absolute rubbish rating, absolutely fake. I think the movie reviewers are just paid to give you trash and to tell you lies. Do not believe them. Do not believe Rotten Tomatoes. Do not believe anyone. Go and watch it for yourself. If you have great fun with the fan service, I'm really glad for you because I had a lot of fun with the fan service, but I had to judge the film for the movie. Did I like the movie? Yes. Am I a Spider-Man fan? Yes. Did I like seeing Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire come together with Tom Holland on screen? Yes. Was it really fun to see all the Spider-Man work together? Yes. Was the story good? No. Was the acting good? No. Were the action scenes good? They were okay, I guess. So, yeah, so 4 out of 10. So that's it from me. It's been almost an hour and it's a really long review. And I usually give reviews to films like these, which, I really spend time to try to break down. because I am hyped up for them. I'm interested for them. And I know the marketing campaign spent a huge amount of money to get films like these going because they want people to be super hyped so that their reviews are already high from the moment they watch it. But over time, people will realize that, they were just crowded. I mean, they were just shrouded by the element of marketing and brainwashing. And eventually they realized that it's not that good. And maybe my 4 out of 10 will be a 3 out of 10 in a few years. But yeah, maybe I'll rewatch it in maybe next week or a few weeks, or maybe never. I don't know. But I'll let you know when I do. Take care, guys. See you in the next one. Adios.